I was born in a little village called Breasted,
Bristol.
Breasted in Kent. It's right down the southeast of England, about 20 miles south of London, in the countryside. And that was pretty much at the outbreak of the war I was born.
Second World War.
Yes,
Yeah.
Second World War. So the first 6 years of my life pretty much bogged down with war, rationing. I mean, it was quite a unpleasant feeling a lot of the time because of the area warnings going off and bombs falling nearby, falling on our house, for example. I remember one time going down the bottom of the garden and looking north to where London was, and I said to my mum, why is the sky all orange and pink and red? And she said that was London burning. It was scary because there were people walking around with gas masks. That was scary. There were people, local wardens would appear in the garden at night, and that was scary. And it was about that time that when the war ended, we were free. It was a sense of freedom that you could go out any time. You didn't have to put these big black things covering the windows every night, which I used to scrape little holes in so I could see the Messerschmitts and the Spitfires fighting in the sky overhead. And that was fun for a little boy, but the danger was always there, you know. So we were able to go. My mum was fanatical about painting, art generally, and painting herself with watercolours. And she did more than encourage us, Angela and I, to go out. That's my sister. To go out into the fields, and we would, when the weather was right, we would take lunch and the paints, crayons, and we would paint, and that's what pretty much we did always when we went out, was to paint and draw.
So
and that's
you
when I started, about 6 years old.
6 years old.
Mm.
So your mother encouraged both you and your sister
Yes.
to start painting.
That's right.
And when you began, did you find that you had a passion for it? Did you find yourself good at
It was
it?
just
or-
something that happened. I
Okay.
wouldn't say it was a passion. It was just a way of life. It just kept us kept us quiet. So what I loved was the theatre, and from the age of about 15, I wanted to be in the theatre or do something in the theatre, do acting. I like doing acting very much. And I was encouraged to go to a theatre school after I'd been to an audition at the Royal Court Theatre, and I ended up at Morley Theatre College in Lambeth in London. It was a 3-year drama course.
So when you were done with theatre school,
Yeah.
did you engage in theatre acting full time?
Yeah, I joined
You
a
did?
company, in an experimental theatre company called the Boundary Theatre Group, run by a man called Peter Bridgemont.
And
Who
for
was,
how many years was that?
He was, I was on and off with them let's think, I was on and off with them from 1961, after I'd left theatre school, through, I think the last thing I did with them was about 1966.
Prior to getting engaged in the Black Portraits
Right.
project, were you ever involved in issues of human rights and social justice?
No.
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 So what got you into that? How did you get into such a complicated and difficult issue?
Yes, it certainly is. Well, I started by wanting to paint somebody that I'd seen on the television, simply because I'd been doing a lot of portrait painting, and I'd been spending a lot of time, if you like, as a full-time painter, portrait painting. And I was just at home watching the television and saw on the screen the face of a man that I really felt I'd like to paint. There was something about his face. There's some dignity, some poetry, some beauty about his face. And that man was on the news, and his name was Liu Xiaobo, and it was being announced that he was going to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2010 to Liu Xiaobo for his long and non-violent struggle for fundamental rights in China.
And it was in 2010, and just to place it, and I didn't know a thing about this man. What appealed to me was his face. It was just because I am a portrait painter that it was just his face, and I knew nothing about human rights or who this man was or why he was in prison, which I learned about on the news, or why he had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And it did cross my mind is because I quite well read and take notice of international news and just fairly well aware of what's going on in the world. I don't know this. Why don't I know this man? Nobel Peace Prize, China, largest population in the world, important country like that, and I don't know about this man. So let's put aside the business of painting him, because obviously now I hear I can't paint him, he's in prison anyway. But it intrigued me, the fact that I don't know, and I started questioning why don't I know, and I thought, well, because he's just on the television tonight and we'll never hear about him again probably unless something else happens to him. And
so you started research about?
So I did research, I found out who he was, why he was in prison, about his background, painted a large picture about him, and then the problem was, how do I paint his face? Still that problem hadn't gone away. So I wanted to talk about him, I wanted to paint him because of his story. The business because of what he looked like, I'd left that behind. And it was his story that was captivating me now. And then while I was researching him, I just stumbled across other people.
So after you started painting and Liu Xiaobo, you saw Liu Xiaobo, you
Yes.
wanted to paint him.
Yes.
You started research and you found out about other human rights
That's
activists.
right. Yeah.
But what is it that made you go on and wanting to paint the others as well? Why did you decide that you wanted to embark on...
Two things. One thing, I was extremely moved learning about these people. I mean, it was tragic hearing their stories. So that was all inside me. And the other thing, I was constantly being reminded that other people don't know about this. The same as I didn't know about Liu Xiaobo. And these people were less well known than him, but their stories were equally as courageous, if you like, and they were equally important within their own countries, what they were saying and what they were in prison for. And none of it was for violence of any sort on their part. And so I felt a necessity to, I can paint, so I could use this facility to tell these stories.
What made you paint them in black? Why black?
Well, the black simply because they can't sit in front of me. So I had to think of a way of painting their face. I wasn't going to compromise on that. If I paint you, you have to sit in front of me. I can take pictures of you and draw sketches, and I can use various things apart from the actual finish, what I'm doing on the canvas, as tools to get to where I want to go. Reminders, so you don't have to sit there for the entire time that I'm painting. And at the same time, I can make a statement by doing that this person is not available to sit and have their portrait painted.
So it symbolizes their absence and thus symbolizes the greater meaning of why they're absent. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, you use the word symbolize. I'm much more simple than that, but I know what you mean. It's a way of getting over a problem. How do I paint somebody that can't sit in front of me? That will work. Mm-hmm. Now, it turns out that if you do this a number of times, you actually end up with something that has impact, because all these people have simply painted with black paint, and that in itself is a statement, which is probably what you're talking, mm-hmm. what you mean. The whole painting, on average 10 days, but it takes longer, but I have to do preparatory drawings, watercolours, and I can show you some watercolours. and then all research, which can take a month. So a month for the research, 2 or 3 days for the drawing and watercolours, and then on average 10 days to paint the actual full-scale oil painting.
And the black portrait alone?
About 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Yes. It's all done with one brush, one colour. It's the same brush each time. So I get up early in the morning when I'm wide awake and think, right, it's ready to do, and I mix up the paint, and I've already drawn it, so it's just a question of...
Mm-hmm. What's next for Paul Piercy?
Yeah, I tend not to box myself into this business of nailing myself down to time moving along or whatever. And it's only as you get older, I suppose, become more aware of my how little time I've got left to do anything. So the idea of planning things rather becomes a lot of the time irrelevant. When you're younger, there's so much you want to do. I had so many ambitions, and they're all crazy ambitions, you know, and they fall by the wayside. And as you get older, you're actually you don't need those ambitions. They're not part of what you need as a young person to be able to sort of go out and fight the world, if you like. Just don't need it. Yeah.